Amelia Earhart, a legend in flight. Introduction: The airplane bounced among the clouds. Giant black storm clouds lay ahead. The year was 1932. The airplane carried Amelia Earhart. She had been the first woman to ride an airplane over the Atlantic Ocean. Now, if she made it, she would be the first woman to fly an airplane over the Atlantic. And she would be the first person to have crossed the Atlantic in an airplane twice. But first, she had to succeed, and the trip was dangerous. Airplanes in 1930s were small. They didn't have instruments that today's pilots do. A pilot had to go by her sense of sight, keeping tight control of the plane. The black clouds ahead and were too large to fly around, so Amelia pointed the little plane right into them. Amelia pointed Ice froze the plane's control, sending it into the tailspin. Amelia struggled to get control. Finally, the ice melted and Amelia was able to pull the plane out of its beam. Many hours later, Amelia set the plane down the Northern Ireland. She had crossed the Atlantic and the airplane she flew herself. She had already been famous. Now she would be a legend, but Amelia Earhart would be the most remembered for something else. While trying to fly around the world, she disappeared. Winged machines. The world's first airplane flight happened in 1903. Two brothers, Wilbur and Orville Wright, successfully flew their winged machine in North Carolina. Many people thought the idea of flying was exciting. It was also dangerous. Planes were fragile and slow. They did not fly well in bad weather, and meant pilots died in crashes. By 1937, airplanes had improved a lot. Engineers designed better airplanes, but accidents still happened. Kansas York. Anyone who knew Amelia as a child could hardly be surprised by her later accomplishment. She was born in Kansas in 1897. She spent most of her time with her family and friends. They climbed around the banks of Missouri River. Amelia made out games for children to play. She and her sister were such active children that her mother made bloomers for them to wear. Unlike dresses, bloomer allowed the girl to be as active as the boys. When Amelia was 21, her family moved to California. One day, she attended an air show. The airplane dazzled her, flying in loops and doing stunts. She knew when that then that she wanted to fly. With her parents' help, Amelia took piloting lessons and saved enough money to buy an airplane. Before long, she was flying in air shows herself. Time to fly. Amelia later moved to Boston and found the job in Denison House. It was the place where people who were poor especially children, could receive help. She left her work there, but then the chance of a lifetime presented itself. George Portman, a publicist, searched for a woman to be the first to ride in an airplane over the Atlantic. It was a dangerous idea. Three women had died trying to cross the Atlantic the year before. Only men have ever crossed the Atlantic in an airplane. Anyone who would try it had to withstand danger and fatigue. fatigue. George thought Amelia Earhart was perfect. She was eager to go. Amelia was just passenger on that 1928 flight. Their life would never be the same. The first woman to cross the Atlantic made headlines around the world. After the flight, she was famous and busy writing books and giving speeches about flying. She also designed clothing and luggage for active women like herself and even helped launch two airplanes later. Married George Putnam. She also continued to fly. By the time she was 39 years old, Amelia had made every major flight was except for one. The greatest challenge left was to fly around the world. Only one pilot had ever flown around the world, but she didn't follow equator, the longest and most difficult route. This was this was route Amelia would fly. Would she make it? By this time no one doubted Amelia Earhart's flying skill. On May 21, 1937, she took off with her navigator Fred Newman. They went to California to from California to Florida, Lockheed Extra. Last flight, Amelia and Fred first stopped the Electra in Florida. The new plane had crossed the entire North American continent. Next, they flew to South America, Africa, India, Asia, Australia. It appeared that Amelia Earhart would once again pull off a historic flight without a hitch. On June 29, 1937, they stopped in New Guinea, just north of Australia. There they filled their airplane and checked their maps. Fuel. So when they took off again, there was no hint of any trouble to come. As they flew across Helens Island, the, their radio messages became odd. The U.S. Coast Guard cutter Itasca waited offshore to receive a signal to help them find the island. Those radio signals were irregular and strange. Amelia spoke of a storm, yet the weather over the island was clear. More than 20 hours in the flight, Amelia's voice said, "We're running north and south." She was never heard from again. What happened to Amelia? This question is still a mystery today. The Itasca and the U.S. Navy began searching for Amelia plane. The search continued for weeks. No sign of the plane Amelia and or Fred was found. After a year of searching, Amelia's husband believed she'd died at the sea, but is that the full story? Some people think Amelia and Fred survived an emergency landing were picked up a Japanese ship. Others think that Amelia landed a plane, but at a different island. There, she and Fred were able to live on native food and die of the other sickness or old age. Many people believe that it's easy answer that the plane landed in the water. Perhaps Amelia and Fred drowned before they inflated their life raft. Whatever happened, there is no doubt that Amelia Earhart is one of the greatest everyone women didn't have to live with limits. She showed the people anyone could find. She was a legend.